invitation at the end is going to be 739 in the book, 739. Now, as I mentioned earlier when we were getting started, that several of us got back from camp in Bandera, Texas yesterday. Now, you need to understand that on our way down there, the church van started having problems. It was a transmission started kicking and running. It just wasn't going well, and we limped into the camp when we got there. So that was a good thing. Figuring out how we were going to get back home was a challenge. And so one of the men there from the Buckingham Road group up in Dallas had some free time. And so he got the van and took it to a transmission specialist. Transmission specialist says, I can't find anything wrong with the transmission. You're going to need to take it to another garage. So we got the van from there and we limped it over to another mechanic. And he worked on it all day long. And after 2 days, we got it back. It was fixed. It was good to go. And so I drove two of our teenagers back to Houston on Friday, dropped them off with their parents, and I went back to the camp. And on the way back to the camp, the check engine light's coming on again, and the transmission started to slip. And I'm like, what in the world? Where is Jonathan when you need him? Right? Come on, come fix this van for me. And so anyway, I know that we have to get up yesterday morning to be on the road by 5:30 so we can get back home from camp. And obviously we made it. But God took care of us, and we're glad to know that. The van does need some work done to it, so keep that in the back of your mind. And I say that to say this. Things happen. Just like this morning, the soundboard being kaboomed, right? My dad not feeling well and stepping in to sing. And Ray, can you give me a little bottle of water, please? Stepping up to lead us in some singing and some songs. And that was good. But while I was a kid, you need to understand our theme was reach up, serve Him. The idea of reaching up and serving God, which is something that we all believe in, we all find to be important and true. But the first night was about Jesus' invitation to follow Him. The second night was about finding our identity in Christ. Excuse me. The third night was about whether or not we were going to make a pledge to join God in what He was doing. The fourth night was about the house of God, and what that looks like to be the family of God. The fifth main message dealt with the initiation. There's always an initiation process, right? You join a club, you join an organization, all of them have their own little built-in initiation type things. And for us, it's to go to the cross. And then the last one was being sent. And we stopped on Friday night and looked at the teenagers, and we talked about what it is to be sent. We said, you're going back to your homes. You're going back to your hallways. You're going back to your schools. You're going back to your jobs. You're going back to your teams. You're going back to your practices. You're going back to your dance recitals. You're going back. Then we asked, well, where do you see problems? Where do you see specifically, the question was, where do you see hurting people? And then the 200 plus teenagers that were there, the microphone was being passed around. And you know what the teenagers' predominant answers were? Our family and our churches. 15, 16, 17, and 18-year-old teenagers were acknowledging that, yes, our friends hurt. But we see hurting people in the church. And we see hurting people in our own families who are struggling. And so this morning, I believe this message is pertinent to where we're at as a body of believers, where you're at as an individual, and even where the example was this morning with the sound system not working. Jennifer will tell you, I had Brandy Lake and others ready to go with us this morning in our worship, but it just didn't work. It changed some things. There's already change going on in this room and in your life and in mine. Dennis is with us today. His leg is going through a lot of different difficulties. We need to continue lifting Dennis up in prayer. But some of us are trying to determine what comes next in life. There are things that happen in our life, things that take us off rail, and we're trying to figure it out. We're watching the life that we've built, or that we're building, begin to change. Change happens. There's no escaping it. It happens to every single one of us, Christian and non-Christian alike. Some of us are being asked to release the roles that we fill in our families, in our schools, in our teams. Whatever it is, the role that we feel important about. Our routines have to change. Our abilities change. Teenagers are playing volleyball, this amazing new sand volleyball court they built out at Camden this year. Guess who didn't play volleyball? Me. I wanted to play, but my jumping's not as good as it used to be. My shoulders don't work like they used to be. My abilities just aren't like they used to be. And people change. We're asked to release those sometimes too. Last night when Fletcher's showed up, and you could hear Julie wailing when you were standing outside. And you could hear Forrest's sister, who was already married, her other two brothers, wailing. You know that sometimes we have to release people. Today we are different ages, different generations, different groups of people. We have different experiences in this room. All of us have different experiences. And we all know what it feels like when the ground beneath us begins to move. Anybody ever heard the phrase, the carpet got pulled out from underneath me, or the rug got pulled out from underneath me? I thought I was doing good, and boom, life happens. You're 25, you're 30, 25, 26 years old. The career that you set out for, that you went to school for, that you dreamed of, is all of a sudden not turning out the way you expected it to. Then you get your 40s, 45 and plus. Your marriage is going good, it's going bad. It's getting older, it's getting stronger. It's changing, right? Children change, business, aging parents, things you start dealing with. You get to your 60s, you start dealing with retirement. That loss of your familiar home. Kind of forget, who am I when I don't have a job to go to? You get into your 80s, or before, and your health begins to decline. You start looking around, as Mr. Harold told me one time, a lot of his friends are gone now. And you live in a world that just doesn't look familiar anymore. It's inevitable. I believe you can attest that it's unpredictable. And it doesn't really care how old you are. Change comes. Anybody play hide and seek before? You do? All right, nice. Good. I love it. You're going to count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then what do you normally say? Ready or not, here I come. Change sometimes gives us a countdown. The clock, the calendar, the gray hairs. But sometimes change comes when we're not ready. It doesn't really care whether we care or not. Change is coming. Like that. That's okay. My sound system doesn't work, the sound system does. God is good. Should hook that one up. So I have sat with a lot of people who feel like they're losing themselves. I don't know who I'm going to be when my spouse dies. I don't know what I'm going to do when I lose my job or my health. My 401k is shot because it was all gone before I got retired. I had an uncle who had all his money in Southwestern Bell back in the day. He retired from them. He and my aunt both did. And before they retired, as they retired, life looked good. and all their stock was gone. They had nothing. But what's going to keep you from, what's going to keep me from, what's going to keep us from losing ourselves when everything around us changes? No. Sailing was different back in the day. Now we got boats with big motors and you can kind of move stuff around. But back in the day, you had this wooden boat that got tossed to and fro by the wind. And you're in this wooden boat and you're going by islands and there's rocks sticking up everywhere. There's coral sticking up. And if the wind blows you into it, the hull of the boat gets ripped apart. You're now in the water. And like the 4 men on the lift boat in 2011, you don't make it home alive. Storms happen. And so what they would do is they would put the sail down so not to fight against the wind, drop an anchor over and pray that it locked into something firm and secure to hold them in place, not to get blown into the rocks on the hills or onto the side of the coral. To keep the boat safe. Then nobody wants to die. And so often when I hear people talking about when change happens, when storms come, they don't say it out loud, but if you listen, they do. I feel like I'm going to die. With anxiety, and pressure, and fear. And yes, the Bible says in Hebrews 6:19, we have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. But what's not anchor? Your circumstances and mine. One day you have a job, next day you don't. One day you have a husband, the next day he's gone. Your health. One day you have it, and the next day they're talking about removing a lung or a liver, or an arm or a leg. A career. One day you get up in the morning, you get out the door, you go to your job, you work all day, you come home, and you're like, whew, that was tiring. You get up and do it again, but you thankfully have it. And the next day you wake up and you don't have a job. You've been downsized. AI has replaced you. Our routines are not anchored. And our relationships. It says our souls are anchored, not our circumstances. Those sailors, they knew when they dropped the anchor down, it locked into whatever was down below that foundation. When it dug deep and held, they knew it wasn't going to stop the storm around them. They were still going to have to deal with the storm. I've been fired more than once in my life. I had to deal with the storm. My mom died. I had to deal with the storm. I sat in the living room last night with a sister whose husband was gone. We weathered the storm. What the anchor does do is it keeps us from being carried away. It keeps us from being crushed on the rocks. You see, somewhere we got this idea in our culture, it's been taught that if I have God with me, nothing bad is going to happen. That's just not true. Jesus was God himself, and he died on the cross to be resurrected. Faith doesn't mean it's not going to hurt. The circumstances of our life don't get the final say. That's why Paul would say, whether I'm well fed or I'm hungry, whether I'm clothed or I'm naked. It's why my dad would say, whether Nina comes home from the hospital or she goes to the mortuary. doesn't get to change who I am. Hope is our anchor. For those of us who have a relationship with God, who call on and lean into who He is. See, our culture, and as I look around in this room and I was at camp talking to the adults, and I listen to people, and I look at social media, and I talk to people in the pie bar, and I'm out doing things with different people from Fight Club and other places. It doesn't matter where I'm at. You can all attest to this. People anchor themselves to their career. They find their stability. They find their hope. They find their peace, even in jobs they don't like, in their career. They anchor themselves to it. They anchor themselves to a title. Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, manager, assistant manager. We anchor ourselves to marriage, husband, wife. To our physical abilities. I'm strong. I can move that furniture all by myself. I don't need any help. In fact, I have a young man that can't tell me. I know I can do it all by myself. I don't like to ask for help. I'm independent. I don't need your help. Financial security. We anchor ourselves to our children needing us. We anchor ourselves to our reputations. And to our familiar routines. But here's the problem. When those change, and they do, we lose ourselves. Jennifer will tell you when our children got married and moved off, there was a transition. All of a sudden, her role as a mother was different. And I can even remember walking by their bedrooms that they stayed in as an adult. And it felt weird that it was empty. And they weren't there. And when you lose your job, what's wrong with me? I can't find one. There was a time I sent out 75 resumes to churches. One responded. That has been many decades ago now. I'm like, what's up? Those of you who are retired, you ever feel like you don't know who you are anymore? No job to go to? You didn't know who you were when mom died. You said it in the hospital room. What am I going to do now? I was there with you. There are people who struggle with not knowing what to do when they retire, whether it be from a job or from a relationship. Empty nest, they feel like I'm not needed anymore. A health diagnosis, my health has betrayed me. It's not fair. I remember sitting in my dorm room screaming, why me, when my neck broke and I was watching the NFL draft. Why me? Why did my health have to break? Getting laid off, unwanted and useless. Or that relationship you were in and they leave you, unwanted and useless. But our identity should not be in the things that we can keep. It's not secured by those things. Because all the things that we think we can keep are no different than pouring water into a ladle full of holes. It goes all over the place. We can't keep it. The beauty industry makes millions off makeup for people to fix their faces, to look younger, to look attractive. You get a brand new car, you drive it off the lot, it's already lost its value. So what what should be keeping us is our God who holds us. And that is easy to say, it's easy to amen, because you're right. Yet so many Christians, myself included at times, are no different than the world who has put their identity and security into all the things I've been talking about this morning. There's going to come a day when your booty drags the floor. There's going to come a day when your chest is hanging on your belly. It's going to happen. There's going to come a day when your hair falls out. There's going to come a day when you get out of bed, like my brother Byron Williamson back in the day. He crawls out of bed. We were at camp in 2010, and I happened to wake up and see him, and he was walking like this. I'm like, Byron, what's wrong with it? What happened? He goes, it's 25 years of jumping in and out of swimming pools, building these things for people. Arthritis has got me, and it takes time to warm up. And I was like, wow. And then this week at camp, I'm waking up going, oh, man, it's the same thing. It doesn't mean don't exercise. It doesn't mean don't take care of yourself and put makeup on. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is those things don't keep you long term. We're going to be in Hebrews 6, 13 through 20. We're not going to be here very long this morning. If you want to follow along, but here we go. When God made his promise to Abraham, I'm going to do with y'all what I do with the teenagers. I'm going to read the white, y'all read the yellow. Go. When God made his promise to Abraham, since there was no one greater for him to swear by, saying, I will surely bless you and give you many descendants. God has not promised that my circumstances will remain stable, is what he's telling us, right? God's saving purpose will not be overturned by changing circumstances. That's his promise to Abraham. Not that your circumstances aren't going to change, but my promise is not going to change. And so, good job. Patiently, Abraham, what was promised, right? So I don't want you to answer out loud, but what promises God made to you, it's not going to change. I'm not asking you what promises you made that changed, or that I've made that changed, but what promise has God made that hasn't changed? Because he keeps his promises. People swear then themselves in the oath, what is said, and we have this cultural idea that I swear on my mama's grave. Because somehow saying that makes it seem more true, right? More foundational. But God's not doing that. Because God, to make the unchanging nature of his purpose to the heirs of what was promised, he can confirm with an oath. God did two unchangeable things, his promise and his oath, in which it is impossible for God to lie, to take hold of the set before us. So what God is saying is, hey, look, the cross, if you don't believe I keep my promises, look to the cross. I'll let my son get on it. I'll let him be crucified. I'll let him die. Yes, I brought him back to life, but I let him go through all that pain and all that agony because it was a promise to do so. It was a promise that I made with Abraham when Abraham knew and I knew he wasn't going to be able to keep the promises. You see, men cheat on their wives. Women cheat on their husbands. Employers will let you go. Mankind knows full well how to be unfaithful. We make a mistake when we start attributing our failures to who God is. God is faithful, and God keeps his promise. And when he married the bride, his church, you and I, collectively and individually, he will always keep his promise. And he did it, want to hear why? For those who have fled. Fled what? Fled all the things that we know don't bring home peace. The things that we put security in, that we know don't last. We already know they don't. God's saying, you've come to me. And he wants us to be encouraged. See, because the Christians in the book of Hebrews were dealing with whether or not to stay true to who God was because of the culture around them, or to revert back to Judaism, because it was easier. And so he's reminding them, look, you might lose your job in this culture. I'm going to take care of you. You might lose your family in this culture. I'm going to take care of you. You may lose your life in this culture. I'm going to take care of you. And so we're fleeing all these things that don't last. And he says we have this hope. I want you to put yourself in a room with a woman that's been married for over 40 years. I want you to put yourself in the room with a mother who has a 40-year-old son on life support. I want you to put yourself in the position of a father who just got his termination papers. I want you to put yourself in a position of the person that you love with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind who walked out the door. I like those teenagers I talked to at camp who were going home to verbally abusive homes. Or they were going home to a place where mom and dad were shacking up but not married, but this man really wasn't dad. Then you go into Bible class on Sunday morning, and everybody says it's all going to be okay. Because that's the world we live in, right? And so the Hebrew writer is saying, look, we got this hope. But I got to use that hope. I got to throw it out, let it sink into who God is. The unchanging, unsinking sand that is Jesus Christ. But I only find out it doesn't fall out from underneath me and collapse like everything else does. When what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 7, I listen to what he says and then I do it. Jesus, only in doing and obeying that we actually find out his way works. As long as we keep being fickle and going back and forth like the world, we'll always question whether God's way works or not. And then we'll blame God for things being so tough, but the reality is, I'm not anchored in it. You know, I can say I am, I can do all the stuff, but here's an example. Jennifer and I have been married 35 years this year. Am I faithful? She says, I better be. Are you? You try. Why shouldn't you better be? My sister, we love each other. I'm messing with you. You know that. But that's the thing, right? That's right. But I better be. It's always to the other person, you better be. But not necessarily I better be. You better be a better husband, a better father, better mother, better wife. You better be faithful. That's easy to look at other people. We need to evaluate ourselves. Not because we're being condemned, Because if we're not anchored, it's not going to catch. And if it's not going to catch, we're going to be busted up against the rocks. And then we're going to be floundering, and we're going to be turning to anything and everything for identity, purpose, and meaning, and foundation. He doesn't say we might have this. He says we what? Have. We already got it. But it does us no good if we don't use it. You ever been to a beautician and had your hair cut without scissors or shears? Why not? Kind of hard to do that, isn't it? You got to use the tools you got. So we have this hope as an anchor for the soul. Because it's only that anchor of the soul that lets Les Como deal with the passing of his wife week of Christmas. That hope is firm and secure, not because I say it is, because God says it is. And God keeps his word. And like with Abraham, he didn't say his circumstances weren't going to change and get kind of rough. What he did say is, this hope is secure and the promise will happen. So it enters into the sanctuary behind the curtain where the forerunner, Jesus, has entered on our behalf. He has become a high priest in the order of Melchizedek. He's saying, look, Jesus is the one. He goes in the inner circle. You go in the inner circle. You have access to God. Jesus is our permanent sacrifice. Once and for all, he is also our priest and our king. Once and for all. It's anchored through change. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul. Firm and secure. My muscles aren't as firm as they used to be. The guys at camp had fun telling me that this last week. I went to move some stuff, and the ladies came over and said, "No, I got that." And that was like, oh, man. But that's just life. Last weekend, Junior couldn't see. His eyes were blind for 3 days.
Yep.
What, 2 days?
3.
3 days you couldn't see. Things happen. My dad used to stand on the stage and sing to thousands, hundreds, 50s. Things change. So when all this change happens, I see on this front row some young people who inspire me. They do. They could be anywhere else but here. But they're here. And they encourage each other, and they lift each other up. And like many of you, when I was down in my surgery, a couple of them showed up with Reese's peanut butter cups. I'll always remember that. But that happens because of our relationship with God. We've been talking about rapture in Revelation 2 and 3 the last few weeks, right? Leading up to it, and what rapture really means. And I make a decision. So if you're here today, this is important for you to hear, and if you're watching, it's important for you to hear. We're moving that to Wednesday nights because it requires discussion. It's something that's a lot deeper than a 5-minute sermon or even an hour sermon going home. So we're going to engage in it, and it occurs to me that as I look around this room, you don't really know about whether God's going to come back for 1,000 years on earth or whether we're going to go up in heaven as long as we're with God, right? But what I do see in this room, from the youngest to the oldest, is a need for hope. And not just the word hope, but the foundation with an anchor, security. Because
Because your lives are changing every day. My life is changing every day. It's not easy. And I don't want to see you broken on the rocks any more than I want to see myself broken on the rocks. I will tell you this. One of my concerns, and I'm just going to share my heart, is that you don't go see our sister, Julie. Because we're busy. Or I don't really know her that well. Because if you don't go see her, even if it's just for a couple of minutes, stopping by, hey Joyce, I want you to know I was praying for you. If you don't do that, it's going to stand out to her. She hasn't been here much because she's been fighting an 8-year battle with her husband with cancer. Last night, Jennifer and I were the only white folks there. Guess what? They know I was there whether I was there or not, right? I stand out. And if you don't go, it stands out. Because it'll be evident the church family wasn't there. Because you're white and I'm white. But that's not why you wouldn't go. I'm not saying we're racist, okay? But what I am saying, same thing happened when Tommy died. And when Lance died. How many of us showed up at Julie's house? How many of us showed up at Jamie and Randy's house when they took the life support off of Seth on Jamie's birthday? Again, not a condemnation, but a realization that those kids had at camp is we're going back home to hurting people. And yes, our lives are busy. But when our lives are so busy, we don't have 2 minutes to say, I love you, to a brother or sister in struggle, then our lives are just too busy. We've got to find a way to take our hope and our anchor and to go into somebody else's life just for the day, for a minute, for 30 seconds. And realize that when we show up, we're helping them hold on to their anchor. That they're not alone. And it matters. And so when we do that, we become stronger. When Brandon showed up last week and gave Junior a ride, he didn't have to.
I was already there putting in the drops in his eyes.
You were putting the drops in his eyes. No wonder he couldn't see. I'm kidding. So, next week, we're going to talk about our purpose is our compass. Compass lets you know where you're going, right? What direction. And I was given a commercial, what I just talked about. To our connection as the crew. So if there's not a crew on the boat, there's nobody to drop the anchor. We need each other. And so whether it's a phone call or a text, okay, we'll take that. But if you can drive over, even for a few minutes the next day or so. Last night, Jennifer counted 18 cars at their house. In less than 45 minutes. You were there. And so that's what I'm getting at, okay? Please hear me. This is not, it's not Kenny being upset. Y'all get that, right? I'm just trying to get the rubber meets the road. Because when the hard times come, and they do, the son gets up and goes sits by his mama and puts his arm around her. When the hard times come, the mama sits by her daughter. Says, we got this. When the hard times come, the wife stands by her husband and says, it's okay. We got this. When the hard times come, the little girl says, I'm going to be gone, but when I go home, I'm going to help. When the hard times come, we surround each other.
And we point to the hope that is God. And this body of believers can do that. Dad, you go ahead and make your way up here for the closing song. Dad. Dad. What number is it? 739. 739. If you would, go ahead and stand. He's going to be making his way up here. One of these days, this guy right here, Kobe, is going to give me a flight around Lafayette. He doesn't know that yet. He's taking all the things I can beforehand. He's going to keep me trash that I have. I'm just kidding. He's like, don't you bear me trash, right? There's a difference between encouraging and discouraging words. That was discouraging. That was a bad thing, right? So anyway.